Alina had just finished a long day at work. The sun was slowly setting, and the streets were filled with people rushing home. She was tired, her feet hurt, and she was thinking about what to cook for dinner. She worked as a school teacher, and even though she loved teaching kids, some days just felt heavier than others. Today was one of those days. The papers she had to grade were still in her bag, and her shoulders ached from carrying them. She stopped by the ATM on the way home. There were already a few people in line. It was one of those old ATMs that always had a long line in the evening. She sighed quietly and took her place at the end, holding her wallet and phone in one hand. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but she had used this ATM many times and felt safe. As she waited, she noticed a man walking toward the line. He looked out of place. His shirt was a little wrinkled and his shoes were dusty. He looked around nervously, like he wasn't sure if he should even be there. He kept checking the time on his watch and holding a small piece of paper in his hand, as if it was very important. His face looked tired, like he hadn't slept well in days. Alina watched him from the corner of her eye. Most people ignored him, but she noticed the sadness in his eyes. There was something about him, something broken, something quiet. He wasn't asking anyone for help. He wasn't causing trouble. He just looked lost. When he reached the end of the line behind her, he looked even more worried. He glanced at the ATM, then back at his paper, then again at his watch. Alina could feel his nervous energy. She turned around and smiled gently. "You can go ahead of me," she said softly. "Looks like you're in a hurry." The man was taken aback. He looked at her, surprised, as if he didn't hear her correctly the first time. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low and unsure. Alina nodded. "It's fine, I'm not in a rush." He paused for a second, still holding his paper tightly, then stepped ahead of her. "Thank you," he whispered, almost too quietly to hear as he moved forward in the line. Alina stood behind him, now watching as he reached the machine. His hands were shaking slightly as he inserted his card and typed his PIN. He didn't withdraw a large amount, just a small sum, enough for maybe a meal or a short trip. When he turned around, he looked at her again, this time with softer eyes. "Thank you," he said again, more clearly this time. "You have no idea what this meant today." Alina gave a small smile and nodded. "Take care," she said simply. He nodded and walked away quickly, almost as if he didn't want anyone to see his emotions. Alina didn't think much more about it. She used the ATM, got her money, and walked home. She didn't know his name, where he came from, or why he looked so worried. She just knew that something about him touched her heart. And she believed in doing small acts of kindness without expecting anything in return. When she reached home, she cooked dinner and sat with her younger brother Imran while he did his homework. Their apartment was small but cozy. The walls were decorated with photos, school drawings, and little notes from her students. Her life was simple. She worked hard to support herself and her brother after their parents had passed away years ago. They didn't have much, but they had each other. That night, as she lay in bed, she remembered the man's face again. Not his clothes or the way. He looked out of place, but the way he looked at her when she let him go ahead. There was something deep in his eyes, gratitude maybe. Or maybe just relief. She hoped he was okay. She didn't expect to ever see him again. People come and go. Some stay in our memories for a while, then fade away, but some are not far from her apartment. The man was sitting on a bench, holding that same small piece of paper and the cash he had just withdrawn. His name was Raymond Carter. And at one time, not too long ago, he had been someone very different. Raymond had once owned a company. He wore suits every day and had meetings with people who respected him. He had money, a nice apartment, and plans for the future. But all of that had changed in just a few months. One business deal had gone wrong. A trusted partner had walked away. Then came the lawsuits, the financial pressure, and the day he had to shut everything down. Now, Raymond had almost nothing. He was living in a shared room in a cheap guest house. His phone was borrowed. He hadn't told his family what happened. He was too ashamed. He had come to this ATM hoping to get enough money to catch a bus to a new city where he might start over. But the line had been long, and the pressure had felt unbearable until the girl let him go ahead. He looked down at the bank slip and then noticed a receipt on the ground. It had fallen when Alina had used the ATM. Her first name was printed on the top. Alina R. He picked it up, hesitated, then folded it carefully. He didn't know why, but it felt important. That small act, those few words had changed something inside him. Just hours before, he had felt invisible, like the world had passed him by. But she had seen him. She didn't ask questions. She didn't judge him. She had simply helped. That night, Raymond decided he wouldn't give up. If there were still kind people like her in the world, then maybe there was still hope. And Alina, in her apartment just a few streets away, had no idea that letting a stranger go ahead of her in line would become the moment that would change not only his life but hers as well. Raymond sat on a cold bench that night, the city lights flickering around him. The small amount of money he had just withdrawn was folded tightly in his hand, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the young woman at the ATM. She had no idea who he was. She didn't ask anything. She just looked at him kindly and let him go ahead. A simple act, but it felt like a lifeline. He unfolded the small paper he had been carrying all day. It was a reminder from a bus service. He needed to catch the last bus to another city, a place where one of his old friends had promised him a freelance job. He hadn't even eaten that day. But now, because of that ATM visit, he had just enough for the ticket. Before leaving the bench, he opened his wallet again. There it was, Alina's name, printed on the receipt she had dropped. He didn't even realize he had picked it up until later. Alina are no last name, no contact info, just a small detail. But it mattered. Raymond hadn't always been this way. Just a few months ago, people used to call him Sir. He used to have meetings in glass buildings, take phone calls every hour, and eat dinner at expensive restaurants without checking the price. He had a company, a tech startup that he built from the ground up. It was his dream, and for a while, it was successful. But success can be fragile. It started with a partnership deal that went bad. One of his biggest investors pulled out at the last minute. Then, a security breach cost the company thousands. Raymond tried to fix things, even sold his car to pay salaries, but the pressure kept growing. One of his closest team members betrayed him by stealing data and starting a rival business. That hit him the hardest. Within weeks, his company shut down. His savings disappeared, paying debts and legal fees. He sold his apartment. His reputation in the industry faded quickly. He became just another name people used to know. Pride kept him from reaching out to his family. He didn't want to tell his mother or his sister that he had failed. Instead, he packed a bag and started moving from one cheap place to another. Some nights, he slept in shelters. Other nights, he used borrowed phones to apply for online jobs. No one recognized the name Raymond Carter anymore, but that day, when Alina looked at him with such simple respect, it reminded him of who he used to be. Not because she knew anything about him, but because she treated him like he mattered. No one else had done that in weeks. Most people avoided eye contact or stepped away from him like he was trouble. On the bus that night, Raymond thought a lot. He looked out the window at the passing streetlights and thought about how life had changed. He wasn't bitter anymore. He was just tired. But now he felt a little more hopeful. Maybe he could start over. The new city wasn't glamorous. It was smaller and quieter. But it was a place where he could begin again. He shared a one-room flat with 2 other men. It wasn't clean or comfortable, but it was better than the streets. The job his friend offered was small, a basic remote tech assistant role, but it paid enough to eat and buy data for his secondhand laptop. Day by day, Raymond worked hard. He built small websites for clients. He answered customer service emails. He helped companies fix their software problems. It wasn't big money, but he was learning to be patient again. Weeks turned into months. He built a tiny portfolio and began getting more clients. Slowly, the money grew. He stopped worrying about every rupee. He bought a better phone. He got a desk for his room. Then a proper mattress. Each little step felt like a victory, but every time he succeeded at something, he thought about Alina. He didn't know why her face stayed in his mind, but it did. Maybe because her kindness had come when he needed it most. It wasn't about the money, it was about being seen. about not being invisible anymore. He searched for her online sometimes. He didn't have much to go on, just her first name and the initial of her last. He checked social media, typed in the area where the ATM was, and even looked through school listings in case she was a teacher. Nothing ever came up clearly. He didn't want to bother her. He just wanted to say thank you. One day, he opened his laptop to an email from a client who wanted to hire him full-time. It was a dream job working remotely for a growing company. Overseas, the pay was better than anything he had seen in months. He sat still for a moment, rereading the message again and again. Then he closed his eyes and thought, I wish I could tell her. I made it. Back in her neighborhood, Alina had no idea what had happened to the man she had let go ahead that day. She didn't think of him much. Life was busy. Schoolwork kept her on her toes. Her younger brother, Imran, was preparing for his final exams. She was saving up for his college fees, skipping new clothes, and taking up tutoring in the evenings. Life wasn't easy, but she managed with grace. She didn't know that one tiny moment at an ATM had become someone's turning point. To her, it was just kindness. To him, it was a reminder that the world wasn't completely cold. Raymond kept her name in his wallet. Even after he got a better place to live, even after he bought a new laptop, even when people started calling him Sir again, he still kept that old, faded receipt. It was a reminder, a memory, a symbol of how sometimes the smallest actions could create the biggest changes. He made a silent promise to himself. One day, when he was stable, he would find Alina, not to repay her with money or gifts, but to show her that what she did mattered. That a small act of humanity had helped someone rebuild everything they lost. He didn't know when that day would come, but he knew it would, and miles away, Alina continued her life, never imagining that someone out there had made a silent promise just because she let a stranger go ahead at an ATM. Time kept moving, as it always does. Months turned into a year. The seasons changed. The city remained busy, noisy, and full of people with their own worries. For Alina, life didn't change in big ways. But in her quiet and hard-working world, small things kept happening. She continued her job as a schoolteacher. Every morning, she would wake up early, prepare breakfast for herself and her younger brother Imran, and take a bus to school. She taught young children, mostly those from underprivileged families. Some came to school without lunchboxes, some without proper uniforms, and some without even notebooks. But Alina tried to treat every child with love and care. She believed that small kindness could change a child's life even if she didn't always see the results. In the evenings, she helped Imran with his studies. He was growing up fast now, almost done with school. He dreamed of going to university and studying business. Alina had promised their late parents she would take care of him. That promise kept her going, even on the days she felt tired or hopeless. She also gave tuition lessons in her spare time. Whatever little she earned, she saved. She wanted to make sure Imran's future wouldn't be held back by money. Many nights she stayed awake worrying, counting her savings, planning expenses. But she never let her worries show in front of him. She always smiled, always encouraged him. One evening, while sitting at her desk and checking exam papers, she suddenly remembered the man from the ATM. It had been over a year now. She wondered if he was okay. She didn't even know his name. Just a tired face and a gentle, "Thank you." She had long forgotten about the moment, but sometimes small memories rise quietly in the heart. That moment stayed with her like a bookmark in a story unread but never lost. Far away in another part of the city, Raymond's life was changing in quiet, powerful ways. After months of hard work and discipline, he had finally built a stable life again. The company that hired him full-time gave him freedom to work remotely. He worked during the day, saved money, and even began investing small amounts. His new apartment was small but clean and peaceful. No shared rooms, no borrowed devices. Everything in it he had earned again with his own effort. He had grown, to not just financially, but as a person. Losing everything had taught him to be more thoughtful, more grateful. He was no longer chasing wealth or success in a hurry. Instead, he focused on building honest work, deep friendships, and a simple life filled with peace. But there was one Thought that stayed with him always, Alina. He still had the receipt with her name on it, kept safely in a drawer next to his laptop. He didn't carry it around anymore, but he often took it out and looked at it, especially on hard days. It reminded him of the day someone showed kindness when he felt invisible. He had tried to find her online again. He searched social media, teachers' listings, and even community blogs near the area where the ATM was, but Alina R. was too common, and he never had her full name or contact. Sometimes he wondered if it was better this way. Perhaps she didn't even remember him, but the truth was, he wanted to do something for her. Not as repayment, but as a way of saying, you mattered. What you did changed something. He didn't want to disturb her or show up without reason. He wanted to do it right in a way that would truly make a difference in her life. One day, while working on a project with a local nonprofit, Raymond met a group that was helping underfunded schools. The organization helps students from low-income families get scholarships, computers, and even school supplies. As he listened to their mission, he suddenly thought of Alina. What if she worked at one of these schools? He asked the director, a kind woman named Nadia, if he could help sponsor a school anonymously. She was thrilled by the idea. Raymond then asked if they had a list of schools that needed urgent help. She pulled up a list, and as fate would have it, one of the names stood out. It was a government school located just a few streets away from the ATM where Alina had helped him that day. Raymond's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know if she worked there, but something inside him told him to try. He asked Nadia if she could arrange a visit to that school under the nonprofit's name. He would come as a donor, nothing more. No pressure, no questions, just a quiet visit. The next week, Raymond arrived at the school. It was a sunny day. Children played in the yard, their uniforms worn but their smiles bright. He stood quietly near the entrance, watching them. His heart felt full. It had been a long journey from the man who once couldn't afford a bus ticket. The headmistress came out to greet him. She thanked him warmly and introduced him to some of the staff. As they walked through the hallway, he suddenly stopped. In a classroom near the end of the hall, he saw a familiar face. Alina. She was standing near the blackboard, helping a small boy with his sentence writing. Her voice was calm, patient. She looked just the same, simple, kind, strong. Raymond froze. For a moment. It felt like a dream. He didn't enter the classroom. He just stood there, watching through the window. The headmistress noticed his silence. Would you like to meet our teachers? She asked. Raymond smiled softly. Not yet, he said. Maybe later. That evening he wrote a letter. He didn't want to walk up to her and say, "Hey, remember me from the ATM?" That would feel awkward. Instead, he wanted to tell the full story, what he had gone through, how her kindness had helped him, and what he had become because of it. He placed the letter in a plain envelope. On the front, he wrote just 2 words, "Thank you." Inside, he also placed a small business card with no title, just his name and email. He handed the envelope to Nadia and asked her to deliver it to Alina quietly. No pressure, no expectations. Just the truth finally delivered. That night, Alina reached home and found the envelope tucked gently inside her school bag. She opened it with curiosity. As she read the letter, her hands trembled slightly. She read every word slowly, carefully. And when she reached the end, she placed the paper in her lap and just stared at the wall. Speechless. She remembered the man. The quiet one at the ATM, the tired eyes, the soft, "Thank you." That was him. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of quiet amazement. She had no idea that one small moment had led to all this. She sat in silence for a while, letting the feeling sink in. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that comes from the heart, and somewhere across the city, Raymond looked up at the stars that night, feeling like a circle had finally closed. Alina read the letter again and again that night. Each word carried weight. Each sentence felt like a gentle wave touching her heart. She sat quietly on the edge of her bed, holding the paper as if it were something fragile and precious. She never imagined that a moment so small, letting someone go ahead at an A-team, could become part of such a deep and moving story. The letter didn't just describe Raymond's pain and journey. It showed how a little kindness could plant a seed of hope in someone's heart. She looked at the business card tucked inside the envelope. His name was written in a simple font. Raymond Carter. There was no title, no position, just his email. He didn't want attention. He didn't want anything from her. He had just wanted to say thank you. And that touched Alina even more. She thought about writing back immediately. But then she paused. What would she say? I'm glad you're doing well. It felt too small. She wanted her words to mean something, just like his had meant so. Much to her, the next day she went to school with a different feeling in her heart. She looked at her students with fresh eyes. If one moment of kindness could change someone's entire path, what could a year of kindness do for these children? She felt a stronger sense of purpose than ever before. Later that week, she finally sat down at her desk one evening and opened her old laptop. She stared at the blank email screen for a few minutes, then slowly began to type. Subject: Your letter, dear Raymond. I didn't know your name until now, but I remember your face clearly. I remember that day at the ATM. I didn't do anything special, at least it didn't feel special. I just saw a man who looked tired and a little lost. You said thank you. That was enough for me. Your letter moved me in ways I can't explain. It's strange how life connects people for a reason. I'm so glad you're doing well now, and I'm deeply touched that you chose to find me, not for credit, but just to express gratitude. You didn't owe me anything, but your words have become a light for me. Sometimes we do small things without knowing their meaning. Your story reminded me that nothing is really small when it comes from the heart. Thank you for writing to me. Thank you for not forgetting. Warm regards, Alina. She clicked send. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then she leaned back in her chair. For the first time in a long while, she felt something bloom inside her, a quiet joy. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it felt real. Raymond read her email the next morning. He had just finished a meeting and checked his inbox like usual. The moment he saw the subject line, he paused. Then he opened it slowly, with care. As he read her message, a smile appeared on his face, soft and full of emotion. It wasn't just a thank you message. It was a moment of real connection between two people who had crossed paths for only a minute, but had unknowingly become part of each other's stories. He replied that same day. Their emails continued, not daily, not even weekly, but when one wrote, the other always answered. Sometimes they spoke about work, sometimes about their childhood, and sometimes about the quiet worries they didn't share with others. In these little messages, a beautiful friendship began to grow. Alina told him how she had raised her brother alone, how she took extra tuition classes to save money for his college. She told him about the joy she felt when her students smiled or learned something new. She spoke about her dreams, simple ones, like owning a small reading library for kids or starting a scholarship fund. Raymond listened carefully. He admired her more with every word. He could see now that the kindness she showed that day wasn't a rare moment. It was a part of who she was. She was someone who chose goodness every day without expecting praise or reward. He shared his journey too, how it felt to lose everything, how shame and fear made him disappear from the world. He told her how her small act gave him courage, how he built himself back from nothing, how, during the hardest nights, just remembering that one kind moment helped him keep going. One day, Raymond made a decision. He didn't want to just talk about kindness, he wanted to do more. He called the nonprofit director, Nadia, again and asked if they would support a new project, something in Alina's name. A reading library in the very school where she taught. Nadia was delighted with the idea. The school lacked a proper library, and many children couldn't afford books. Raymond offered to fund it entirely, but asked one thing. He wanted it to be named the Alina Room, a small but lasting tribute. Within 2 months, the room was ready. Bookshelves lined the walls. Storybooks, dictionaries, learning materials, all new, all chosen with love. A soft carpet covered the floor, beanbags placed in corners. A small wooden board outside the room read, "The Alina Room, a place to dream and learn." Raymond didn't tell Alina right away. Instead, he invited her to the school one weekend. saying only that there was something he wanted her to see. When she arrived and saw the signboard, she froze. For a moment she didn't say anything. She just looked at the words, her eyes slowly filling with tears. Then she turned to him, speechless. Raymond smiled gently. "You gave me back my strength when I had nothing. Now it's my turn to help others believe in themselves." Alina couldn't find words at first. She just placed her hand over her heart and nodded. It wasn't just about the room. It was about being seen, about being valued, about knowing that what you do in quiet corners of life matters. From that day forward, the Alina room became the most loved space in the school. Children who never touched storybooks before now read with excitement. They sat cross-legged, turning pages slowly, discovering new worlds. And every time Alina passed by the room, she smiled, not because her name was on the wall, but because kindness had come full circle. Raymond visited often, but not as a guest. He blended in with the volunteers, sometimes reading stories to the children, sometimes fixing the library's computer system. He didn't want anyone to think of him as a millionaire or a sponsor. He was just a man who had once been lost and who found his way back through a single act of kindness. And as their friendship deepened, a new chapter quietly began to write itself, one not of debt or favor, but of mutual respect, shared values, and the gentle magic of two hearts that understood each other. Time moved gently after that. The school grew livelier, the children more curious, and the library became a small wonder in their little world. Every day, a group of children would rush to the Alina room during break time. They would sit in corners, read new books, or ask Alina to help them read difficult words. It became more than a room, it became a place where dreams began to take shape. Alina felt like her purpose was finally being seen. Her hard work, her sacrifices, the quiet way she cared for every student, it was all beginning to bear fruit. And at the heart of it all was Raymond, who had walked into her life in the most unexpected way, carrying a story that she had unknowingly helped rewrite. Their friendship, which began with a letter, had now grown into something deep and steady. They didn't need to talk every day, but whenever they did, there was warmth, understanding, and a quiet respect in their words. They met often at the school and sometimes on weekends for coffee or a walk through the park. It was during one of these walks that Raymond shared a new idea with Alina. "I've been thinking about something," he said, gently kicking a small stone off the path. "There are so many children like the ones in your school. Children with big dreams but no support. What if we start something together, something bigger?" Alina looked at him curiously. "Like what?" He smiled. "A foundation. We can call it the Little Kindness Foundation. It could help students with scholarships, school supplies, and maybe even training programs for young teachers." Alina stopped walking for a second. Her heart felt full. "You mean we do this together?" "Why not?" he said. "You've already changed so many lives. I just want to help carry that kindness further." Alina nodded slowly. "Then let's do it. Let's help more children, more than we ever imagined." Over the next few months, the foundation started taking shape. They registered it officially. Raymond used his business experience to handle the planning, legal work, and funds. Alina used her deep knowledge of school systems, student needs, and teacher training. Together, they formed a small team of dedicated people, teachers, volunteers, and retired principals. They started visiting schools across the city, especially in areas where children had fewer opportunities. They provided books, uniforms, study material, and workshops for teachers. And most importantly, they gave hope. Word about the foundation began to spread. People started writing to them, asking for help, offering support, and sharing stories. Journalists wrote small articles in local newspapers about the teacher and the man she helped at an ATM. The story inspired many others to do small acts of kindness in their daily lives, but through it all, Alina and Raymond remained humble. They always remembered how it all started, with one small moment, one simple act, one ordinary day. One day, Imran, Alina's younger brother, returned home from university and said, "You know, Appa, all my friends keep talking about this foundation." "I didn't know my sister had become a local celebrity," Alina laughed. "I'm still the same teacher, Imran, just working a little harder now. Imran smiled. No, you've always worked hard. The world is just noticing now. Raymond and Alina continued to meet regularly, not just for work, but as close friends who had become part of each other's lives. Slowly their bond deepened. They didn't say it out loud, but something quiet and steady had begun to grow between them, something that went beyond friendship. Raymond admired her strength, her heart, and her simplicity. She had never judged him, never made him feel small, even when he had nothing. And Alina saw in him a man who had fallen but chosen to rise with grace. Someone who didn't just rebuild his life but used it to uplift others. One evening, after a long day at a school event, they sat at a small roadside tea stall, watching the sun go down. I don't know how to say this properly, Raymond said softly, looking at his cup. But I'm thankful for that day at the ATM, not just because you helped me, but because that moment changed everything for me. I didn't just get back on my feet, I found a new purpose. And I found you. Alina looked at him, her eyes soft. She smiled. You didn't owe me anything, Raymond. But I'm glad life brought us here. Sometimes all it takes is one moment. He nodded, then after a pause he said, Alina, I don't want to imagine the future without you in it. Not just as a friend or a partner in the foundation, but in life. Would you consider building the rest of this journey with me? Alina didn't answer right away. She looked at the trees in the distance, the orange sky, the children laughing nearby. Then she turned to him and said gently, I would like that. I really would. And just like that, a new chapter quietly began. They didn't rush into things. They continued working, continued helping others. But now they did it side by side, not just as friends or colleagues, but as two people who had discovered that sometimes life brings the right people together in the most unexpected ways. Eventually, their foundation grew into something much bigger. They opened learning centers in smaller towns. They launched programs to train teachers across the country. Alina became a speaker at educational seminars, sharing her story. Raymond began mentoring young entrepreneurs, encouraging them to give back to their communities. They never forgot. Where it all began at a small inn corner on a rainy evening, where a tired man stood at the end of the line, and a kind woman simply stepped aside and said, You go ahead. That one small gesture didn't just change his day, it changed his life, and together, they kept that kindness alive, passing it forward, one life at a time, because sometimes the smallest moments leave the biggest marks. And sometimes one simple act of kindness is the start of a beautiful forever.